Week 1 is finally here. Now let's talk about some fantasy. What up, everybody? It's the Rottweiler Patriots. I'm Vegas.
And I'm T-Bone.
And welcome, everybody, to our Week 1 preview for the Rottweiler Patriots Fantasy Football League. If I sound a little different, it's because I'm kind of sick right now, but we're going to power through it. So, before we look at the matchups for this week, we're going to go ahead and look at any trades or transactions that have happened so far. So, looking at this here, our first trade is Shadow receives Anthony Richardson and sends Najee Harris to Butkus. So Shadow now has Richardson, Butkus now has Najee Harris. And looking at the other trade that happened, Vegas sent Raheem Mostert and Dalton Schultz to Titus in exchange for David Njoku and Breece Hall. And now looking at roster moves, Titus has kind of made a whole bunch here, so I'm just going to scroll through all of this, and if you want to pause and figure out everything that Titus did here, go ahead. Then you have the trades being processed, and Shadow dropped Jared Goff and picked up Zamir White. And that is it for the transactions. Now let's look at the upcoming matchups for this week. Alrighty, looking at our first matchup, we have Vegas taking on Rowdy. Both players, I think, have pretty solid teams, and as you can see, it gives Vegas a 56% chance to win, Rowdy 44%, so the edge right now is to Vegas. So you can see quarterback Lamar Jackson versus Josh Allen, running backs Hall and Barkley versus Etienne and Mixon, wide receivers Hill and Diggs versus Ayuk and Samuel, tight end is Laporta versus Ingram. Flex, you have Mike Evans and Kyron Williams for Vegas, and Michael Pittman and Calvin Ridley for Rowdy. At kicker, you have Cameron Dicker for Vegas and Harrison Butker for Rowdy, and you have the Tampa Bay defense for Vegas and the San Francisco 49ers defense for Rowdy. Now this is what it is as of right now. It's very possible that, pending injury, starters might change. You can also look at the bench here. You have Prescott, Jones, Cooper, Njoku, and Cleveland defense for Vegas, and Purdy, Moss, Komet, Ferguson, and the Jets defense for Rowdy. T-Bone, what are your thoughts on this matchup?
I'm sure it's going to be a tough matchup. Both great teams. Both, got great stuff. The wide receiver core for Rowdy's team is quite exquisite. I mean, I typically shy away from picking two of the same position of the same team, but I personally, even in a few leagues, did T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. Ayuk and Samuel's not a bad thing either. Obviously, the questionable trade that I don't agree with has helped Vegas's odds even more, but well, that's what Vegas does, improves odds.
Yeah, but either way, I actually think this will be a really, really fun matchup, and I think Rowdy's going to have one of the most underrated teams in the league, so I think it's going to be closer than people think. Alrighty, our next matchup is Shadow versus Titus. Titus, I don't even know what's up with his team. He's missing a bunch of empty slots and needs to put some starters in right now. I don't know if this results of his transactions or what, but Titus definitely needs to put some people on. But either way, Shadow has a pretty solid team, just acquired Anthony Richardson in a trade with Butkus, and you have Jonathan Taylor, Devon Achane, two very good running backs. You have CeeDee Lamb and Garrett Wilson, and you have Mark Andrews. That's just a stacked squad of skill players. Plus Drake London, Alvin Kamara in the flex. Very, very good. Jake Elliott and the Miami Dolphins defense. The people that Titus even has starting is Matthew Stafford, very, very good quarterback. Jahmyr Gibbs, excellent running back. I think he'll be one of the stars of Titus's team. Malik Neighbors took a risk with the rookie, but if he can produce, then, it could be pretty good. You have Jalen Waddle for the Dolphins. He usually puts up a lot of good numbers. You got Chris Godwin, Jerome Ford, Fairburn. And then you look at the benches. You got Jordan Love, White, Rashee Rice, DK Metcalf, Scary Terry, Rashad Tungavailoa, Mostert, Hubbard, Reed, Kirk, Addison, Schultz. And the Seattle defense currently on the bench for Titus. I think he, because of some of his transactions, has a little messed up, but he will put in his starters. T-Bone, your thoughts on this matchup?
Well, I think Titus is just an idiot on some of this, but that that comes from a lack of knowledge. So in Shadow being experienced, that's obviously led him to where he's at. Though I don't think transactions helped him.
I mean, Shadow's going to have one of the most competitive teams in the league, and I would argue that out of everyone who is playing in this league, Shadow is the best fantasy football player.
False.
And, quite frankly, has an incredible team. Who would you say is better?
Me. I've been to more championships. I've won more.
Well, we'll talk about your matchup here in a minute, but first we'll move on to our next matchup, which is Bam Bam versus Max. Both players have really good teams, and this looks like it's going to be a really close matchup. You got Stroud versus Mahomes for quarterback, White and Cook versus Bijan and Josh Jacobs at running back, Jamar Chase and Amon-Ra St. Brown versus Puka Nacua and George Pickens at wide receiver. You have Kyle Pitts versus Dalton Kincaid at tight end. You have Marvin Harrison Jr. and DJ Moore versus Keenan Allen and David Montgomery for your flex. And you have Brandon Aubrey versus Jake Moody for your kicker. And the New Orleans defense versus the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. All of the players on both of these squads in the starting lineup are really, really good. And this is going to be a really close and really fun matchup. And even on the bench, you got Brooks, Connor, Higgins, Flowers, and Freiermuth for Bam Bam, and Caleb Williams, Tony Pollard, Xavier Worthy, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and George Kittle for Max. So I think both players had a really, really good draft. I think both are going to have really competitive teams, and this will be a really close and really fun matchup. T-Bone, your thoughts?
This is going to be one of the more competitive games for sure. I mean, I see good players on both sides, so I'm really looking forward to it. On the bench, too, pretty fold-out team, everywhere you go.
Absolutely. Can't wait to see how this one unfolds. And our final matchup is T-Bone versus Buttkiss. This is another matchup that looks like it's going to be really, really close. And I'm actually surprised at how close a lot of the projected scores have been. Most scores in the league have all been within 10 to 15 points of each other, which, when it comes to projections, I think is pretty close, because anyone who's played fantasy knows projections mean nothing compared to what happens in reality. But looking at these teams, you have Joe Burrow versus Jalen Hurts at quarterback, Derrick Henry and Isaiah Pacheco versus Christian McCaffrey and Ramondre Stevenson at running back. You have Justin Jefferson and Amon-Ra St. Brown versus Devontae Adams and Chris Olave at wide receiver. You have Taylor McBride versus Travis Kelce at tight end. You have Kenneth Walker and Devontae Smith versus Nico Collins and Cooper Kupp at the flex. You have Justin Tucker versus Evan McPherson at the kicker. And you have the Cowboys defense versus the Ravens defense there. Looking at the bench, you got Kyler Murray, DeAndre Swift, Tank Dell, Brock Bowers, Daniel Carlson for T-Bone. And you got Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence, Najee Harris, TJ Hawkinson, Younghoe Koo for Buttkiss. This looks like it's a really close matchup and like it's going to be a lot of fun. T-Bone, your thoughts?
Don't listen to the odds. I'm going to crush them. That, or maybe not, because CMC and Jalen Hurts both are just all you need to get to like 80. The running quarterbacks just automatically have a better, from the get-go jump, good at getting points. But I trust Joe Burrow. Even with his first 5 weeks, hangover that he always has. I trust Icy Joe's. I trust.
it'll be interesting to see because Jalen Hurts does run more and is more likely to get a rushing touchdown. I think it's going to be really interesting, the McCaffrey versus Henry matchup, because, you're talking about two premier running backs in the NFL.
McCaffrey's obviously going to win, but I'm hoping that here's the thing, and this has been a gamble for everyone in fantasy the entire season, no matter our teams or our league or not. Derrick Henry is entering the twilight of his career, so either he is going to have a graceful decline and still be one of the top running backs, or we're all going to be in big trouble.
I mean, he's got a pretty good team to work with in Baltimore. That's a good offensive line. It's a good scheme, and there's enough all around him on other parts of the field that defenses have to worry about that it should open up space for him to be the absolute monster that he is. So I really think this is going to be another one of those really close matchups, one of the best matchups of the week. Honestly, the only matchup I don't think is going to be terribly close is Shadow versus Titus. But regardless, I think we got 4 pretty good games, and it'll be interesting to see how everything kicks off in Week 1. Alrighty, there you have it. That is going to be it for today. Please let us know who you're rooting for down in the comments, your thoughts on each matchups or anything else. We would love to hear what you all have to say. And that is going to do it for us today. Thank you all so very much for watching. Please be sure to hit the like button. Please be sure to subscribe. And we will see you all next video.